Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-host, Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain. Kenny's not with me today. Kenny and I had some spring break. I may make him host one by himself tomorrow. We'll see. Or next week. I'm on spring break this week. He's on spring break next week, so the timelines are a little off. But we do have a guest for today. Coach, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm JR Quarnberg, longtime follower of the podcast, so it's cool to be on. I'm in a small school in southern Utah, Kanab High School. Been coaching here, been the head coach here for 4 years. Helped with the varsity JV 8th grade, a few things before that with a longtime coach here, and was able to come in and take over. So just getting through the first few seasons and learning as I go, but it's been an awesome journey. It was never a big goal of mine to be a head football coach. I mean, I was raised on football. My dad was a head football coach. So myself, just like my boys, football, we live and breathe football. But, it's never a life goal for me to be a head coach. I know I wanted to be around it and raise my boys doing it. But it's been awesome to get into it and to be a head coach. I coach in a community that I love, that has a strong football tradition and a really competitive league. So it's been awesome to be a part of it. I always kind of say the thing that made me feel like I could be a football coach was probably the wing tee. And I didn't run that my whole life. It's not the offense my dad ran, but my senior year, my dad stepped down. A coach came to town and he installed the wing tee, and it was the first that we'd seen of it, and probably the first that it had kind of been ran in our area. And it was awesome. We turned the program. It had a rough couple years. We turned it around and had a great season. Led our league in many statistics and competed for a state championship. Fell a little bit short, but I was an average football player. Played quarterback in that, and just I loved that offense. Well, that coach who had come to town, he was from Bellevue High School, and famous wing tee school, Coach Dwayne Hatch, and he was kind of the godfather of the wing tee in that area, and he was a good friend of mine. He's my defensive coordinator now. He was his grandpa. So he came here and coached us for one season and kind of taught that offense to a coach that has been here for a long time, the coach that I took over for. So that was awesome to have the wing tee come in. It was awesome to know Coach Dwayne Hatch, and he's kind of been a mentor to us when we took over. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but out in Bellevue High School, he coached with Pat Jones, just two legendary wing tee coaches. There's a movie, When the Game Stands Tall? When the Game Stands Tall, it's a movie on Bellevue High School. The movie's about De La Salle. They were on the longest winning streak in history, and Bellevue went up and beat them. So that movie is about De La Salle, but just one crazy thing about the movie, if you watch it, you got to check it out. It's a good football movie in general. De La Salle loses that winning streak, but they go on to win the championship. But in the movie, Bellevue's throwing a bunch of passes and stuff. But the true story of that is they were a wing tee team, and they beat De La Salle without running the ball one time. I mean, without passing the ball one time.
The ball one time.
Yeah, one time.
When the Game Stands Tall. Well, I found it on Google, so I'll have to pick it up and watch it. That sounds like a good movie. It also sounds like some Hollywood stuff, having to add the pass in there to keep people interested, right?
They for sure added some Hollywood in that. So it was cool to kind of watch that movie. You can see some of that game on YouTube, and they're running, what we call cross block and belly, and De La Salle has no answer for it, so it's kind of cool. But then I got to know Pat Jones. He's still coaching today, but I mean, he won 7 state championships in a row as the offensive coordinator at Bellevue. He's as good as it gets. And talking to him about that story, it was pretty cool. He has a book. The book's great too. It's The Real Bellevue Story. It's the book that Pat Jones wrote, and I read that book, and he talks about going up to their football camp and stuff for that game. And they'd had a death. He'd had a death. His mom had passed away, and they kind of all gathered together and had an awesome experience, and they were going to go beat De La Salle. And it was pretty cool to see that side of it and some of the things that they did from the wing tee perspective to to go beat those boys.
Well, Coach, you said you're kind of a wing T guy, and even before we hit record here, you were talking to, you just love the offense, and I think that's a great place to be, right? And we're kind of focused on that today, is just having an identity and running your best stuff, and having ways to make it successful, even when people try to take it away. But I think people can get lost in this internet world of football, where, I mean, at any day, there's some coaches out there that each week they can be a different offense, even though they don't really mean to, but it's because they're always just chasing what the internet's doing, right? And so I think it's really neat. I personally am not a wing T guy, right? I grew up in flex bone and wing T, and I hated it because I was a subpar athlete, and so I never got any reps, and it was just kind of the offense that couldn't ever score. We weren't a very good football school, and so I think we just kind of were soured on the offense because we weren't any good. But that was just as a kid, right? The coaches obviously didn't see it that way, but I just kind of am passionate about football, and I know people out there can be passionate about any one scheme and make it successful. So I'm pretty excited to kind of talk about that today and feel your passion come out for the wing T. I don't necessarily knock you for liking that offense. I like all offenses. It's just that one I was soured on as a kid. So I'm excited for you to try to turn the tides there.
Yeah, well, I think that's something you and Coach Simpson hit on a lot, is whatever it is, have a system, something that you believe in. And that's been so important for me. I mean, when it's 3rd and 3, we know what we're running, and I think there's a lot of value to that. So
Absolutely. Let's real quick get the quote of the week out of the way, and then we'll jump into some ads and we'll get into our talk. Quote of the week this week is: "The freedom to be yourself is a gift only you can give yourself, but once you do, no one can take it away." And that is by a I'm going to mess that name up. Zantamata. I'm going to go with that. And I think it fits pretty good here, right? For this conversation today, just be yourself. Whatever it is your team's good at, go out and be that. And then, have answers, because no one can take it away. Once you've made your identity, people are going to have a lot harder time kind of getting you out of that identity in football or life or whatever. I'm real big into a leadership and all that stuff right now. So the quote kind of hits better for me, just because it's not just football, but anything you want to do in life. Well, real quick, man, we're going to share you some ways we can simplify football for our staff and our athletes, and then we'll get on to our conversation. What's up, coaches? I want to talk to you for just a few moments about your program. The longer I'm in this profession, the more I understand that efficiency is truly the name of the game. We're talking offense, defense, doesn't matter, right? Eventually, you're going to come down to checking out your efficiency. So I have to ask you, are you doing everything in your program the most efficient way, right? Are you fundraising the most efficient way? Are you representing your players and your program to the public in the best way? Are you planning to build the facilities the most efficient way? If you answered no to any of those, or really even if you answered yes to all of them, and you haven't contacted Mark Bridges at Ace Sports, you're missing a key step. So look, Mark and his team, they are the go-to group for video board and scoreboard installations for your school. They're not just football either. Mark can help you mock up your newest video board for that new stadium, or maybe even your old stadium, right? That's where Mark and the guys come in. And we're not just buying a flashy thing, right? Yes, it's nice. It's pretty neat to have that big scoreboard, that big video board, but you're also, you're investing back into that program. You're investing into that newest fundraiser. Sure, you can keep selling your discount cards, your beef jerky, hosting pie auctions, whatever it is that you like to do. But let's just be honest with ourselves, guys. We're not making enough money for those big ticket items. For the big ticket items like turf, an indoor facility, that's where you need a big ticket item fundraiser. That's what Ace Sports is offering you today. Guys, I've talked to Mark several times now, right? And it always comes down to big school, small school. Right? Well, of course, the big schools can afford that new video board, but the small schools really can't. It's just not true anymore, man. Your school isn't too small, and I promise. Okay, 1A, 2A schools, it doesn't matter. Mark and the guys, they're helping them out. Contact Mark today at mark.bridges@acesports.com and let him come give you a quote. Let him show you and your administration the plan. Now, really, it's the cheat code, right? Let him show you the cheat code that is fundraising with Ace Sports video boards. Tell him Daniel sent you. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Speed and Movement. At athleticspeedmovement.com, we've taken Del Basquet's 45 years of speed and movement training and put it all in one place just for you. You can get the same training that NFL players have been getting for years, collegiate players have been getting for years, and now high schools across the nation are paying thousands of dollars to bring Dell in to install his system, but we've got it online for you. It's time to help your team become faster, not just in the 40, not just their sprint speed, but between the tackles and their cuts while they're chasing down the quarterback. It's time for you to help them become faster everywhere. Jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com There's an orange button there. Just click it. It says, get the keys to playing faster. You'll get the 3 core movement video from Dell. He's explaining the science behind it, all for just the price of your email. Check it out, athleticspeedmovement.com.
Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Findaway Productions. Findaway Productions also sponsors fbcoachsimpson.com for all your coaching needs, with over 30 coaching materials, books, as well as 50 PowerPoints and videos and smaller materials, and the free magazine headsets. Findaway Productions also sponsors offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things offense, and defensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things defense.
All right, Coach, I have to look at the date this comes out. I think this comes out on the 4th, which means this is coming out the week of maybe just after the Boston clinic. Kenny and I are going up to Boston to do a clinic, and then the next weekend we'll be going to Milwaukee. So 2 very, very busy traveling weekends for us. So I think this comes out immediately following Boston. So I hope that you all enjoyed that. And then as we jump into Milwaukee week, if you haven't gotten to a clinic yet, Milwaukee's your last chance, the last clinic of the season, to go to the Gun T Clinic. So jump over to Milwaukee, get a flight in. I think he's got some reduced priced hotels on the website, fbcoachsimpson.com. I think it's /clinic, but you can just go to the main website and find the clinic stuff. Real quick, I want to mention my Patreon, patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. That's just a place where I'm just trying to help coaches get better at everything. If that's social media, if that's recruiting, if that's just building a playbook, if it's onboarding a new athlete or a new coach, there's tiers there for everything. So jump in, check out the tiers. If one of the tiers doesn't match up to what you need, holler at me. We'll create your very special, your own tier and get you in. And then Headsets Magazine is coming out. I think we've got 3 more months of Headsets Magazine. So get over and read those, FB Coach Simpson /headsets, and that should take you there to all the magazines. There's already released 2 or 3 this year. I think we got 3 left. Great read. It's written by coaches, so different articles by different coaches in the area. It's a great place to increase your football IQ. Coach, any social media or anything like that to share for your school? That'd be a great place to drop them. Where can we go learn about the Cowboys?
Not a big social media guy, but we have an Instagram page for the team, Kanab Cowboy Football, all one word. My Instagram handle's JoeQ21, so JoQ21. We're the Kanab Cowboys down in southern Utah and Kanab, Utah.
Love it, man. You know, I really like talking to the small school guys in football. The big school guys seem to have everything figured out. They know who their quarterback's going to be for the next 12 years, right? And then sometimes the small school guys, like, you don't know who the quarterback's going to be at the end of the season. So it's a pretty fun way of life down there. And when you get into the social media and stuff, I think that's a great place to kind of share about those. I think it's a big program builder once people get into them. But yeah, man, I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. So let's just start out. Number one, we're going to talk about just running, your best stuff and how you need to be able to do that on a really a series to series basis, not only, game to game. So kind of talk to me through that. What is your best stuff generally? How do you decide that? How do you pick your identity, create that identity? Let's have that conversation.
So when you talk about the wing tee, I'm sure if Kenny was on, he would agree with some of this, but part of the wing tee is it's a series-based offense. So you're looking for, you got a guy up in the box and hopefully he's able to help you, and you're looking for, what are they giving us? If they're taking away something, us wing tee guys, that's the way we're wired. So we say if they're taking away something, they're giving us something else. And we believe that, week to week when we make our game plan, we believe they can't stop everything we do. And there's so much value in that, and I'm trying to get better at that as I go along. I'm trying to have the right guy up top to help me. We're trying to add those resources with cameras in the end zone, and we've added our huddle camera up top. And so there's more resources where we can look at it and say, they're doing everything to take away this guy or this series this week. So what's our answer? And when we get that right, we're really good. And when we don't, we struggle. But, we're learning as we go. But this year, we're just coming off our best offensive season. Since I've coached in the 4 years, we rushed for 3,500 yards and 45 touchdowns. So our run game was really good. And working with Coach Pat Jones, I mentioned, him being a mentor. This is where this kind of came from. When I first met him, we were were in the basement at Coach Hatch's house. He's 90-something years old now, so he was just kind of watching us work, and it was great to be around him. But he had watched, before we met, he'd got on and watched our semifinal game that we'd lost. We've lost 2 state championships and 2 semifinals, and he was watching the semifinal game from the year before. And he asked me as we sat down, he said, I've watched that game and, a couple of the other stuff that you have there on Huddle. And he said, what's your best play? What are you the best at? And I told him, I thought for a second, I said cross block. And some wing tee guys call that ISO or whatever you call belly. I think most wing tee guys are going to call it belly. We call it cross block. And so he looked at me and he said, well, you had the ball with a chance to go down and tie it, and you didn't run cross block once. And that kind of hit me, it's like, if that's our best stuff and we can't run it when it matters most, that's trouble. So I kind of started shifting my mind is, what are we the best at? Because we have to have that. And we have it against a lot of teams, but against the best teams we play, when they take that away, they're a good enough team. They're coached well enough to get on and say, we have to stop this. They're too good at this. And so they take that away from us, and we're not as good of a football team. And so in the basement that day, we started talking through, well, what are you going to do to make sure you have it? Because some teams are going to, by formation or put their best players where they need to be, take that away. So we adjusted a little bit and said, we have to have this series this season against everyone we play. So what are we going to do to make sure we can run it?
Yeah, that's a talk about running your best stuff and having that identity. And Kenny kind of talks about it enough, just knowing. Well, you said it earlier. If it's 3rd and 3, right, the game's on the line, you don't even have to call the play. The kids already know what's coming, right? They already know who's getting the ball, what play you're running. You might change up some tags or whatever, but they know, and that is having an identity. I think that especially on the offensive side of the ball, so on defense, I was kind of taught early on, take away page 1 out of their playbook, right, and then you need to have an understanding of what page 2 is, and be able to take it away and make them play on that 3rd or 4th page where it's stuff they don't want to run. So it sounds like you just eventually ran into some really good defensive coordinators who kind of understood that. But as the offensive side, as I've switched sides and kind of went to the offensive side of the ball, I know that people can't take it away forever. And I also have the ability to manipulate them and make them do what I want them to do, or they think they're getting what they want, right? And then we're really running something else. So kind of walk me through there, Coach. How did you – so you go into hey, I need to be able to run belly against every team, but some guys just have the dudes, right? Some just have scheme that takes it away. So kind of what was your next step?
Yeah, I think I've listened to you and Kenny enough. I know you like tags, Coach, and I know Kenny, if he was in this conversation, for him, as far as I know, I think it's probably buck sweep is the stuff he's going to run. And I sat in his clinic a month ago, and he has a lot of different ways to run that, and I think most good wing tee teams. And buck sweep is page 1 in the wing tee, and we want to be able to run buck. Our best runner, a lot of times is our halfback, our guy that can go score. So we want to get him the ball and run buck. So what we did is we kind of, and to be honest, a lot of this came from you guys. What phase 1 was tags. So we want to be able to have some tags where we can, what technique are the defenders in? What adjustment can we make? How can we tag the play? Whether that's, first and kind of the most basic part would be a formation or a shift or a motion to try to manipulate someone. But a little bit further than that, it might be, what are we going to do with the guards and tackles? So, we might tag on buck sweep, for example, we might make a stay call and have our strong guards stay and down block because there's a defender. He's got an inside shade defender that the tackle can't get down to, and he's keeping our guard from getting out. Our quick guard's always our best player. We want to get him out, and so they'll try to take him away with that defender so we can make a stay call. We can make a wide call if they're trying to spill our guards. Let's, our halfbacks, our kid with some speed usually, make a wide call and run the sweep out wide. It'll look more like a jet sweep, or whatever it is. We have a tight call. We'll run the sweep almost a gap, kind of kick out and run it tight. We had a change call, where we could have the tackle pull instead of the guard. And Coach Simpson had a Trojan play in his clinic we've been stewing on that. I was hoping to chat with him about it today. But as I looked at that, I was like, man, Trojan basically is 2 or 3 of our calls kind of automatic. They have to. And this is kind of where I wanted to go with our belly series, but they kind of have to know this is what we're seeing on Trojan. We're going to block it this way. But what Trojan did is it fit into our philosophy because we're a rule-based offense. We want them to understand what their rule is and execute that rule and not have to think a whole bunch about, if I do this, what's he going to do or whatever. So it's like, just follow my rule and trust that the guy next to me will follow his rule. So Trojan kind of got you automatically into some of those tags that have been our favorite on the Buck Sweep series.
Yeah, if I remember right, Trojan is his like basically his pin pull, which he just runs as a sweep. So it sounds like your wide call, but then, you know, kind of more rules based, letting whoever needs to pull, right? I mean, I think he doesn't pull center, but, you know, he likes a lot of the pin pull stuff too.
Everybody but the center could pull. So that's interesting to me. That's kind of our wide and change call mixed together. So we plan to work on that one. But what we found with the tags is, okay, the tags are great, but I have to send them in. So we run a sweep and my coach up top says, hey, try running it wide. And then I'll come back to sweep a few plays later. And it's like, I wish we wouldn't have called wide right there. You know, the regular sweep was there. So that's kind of what we've ran into with the tags. The tags on the formations and the shifts and the motions are great, but trying to run those tags live, sometimes you miss. Yeah. And you wish you wouldn't have called it, or you wish you would have called a different tag. So then you start getting into, man, do you let the players make these calls at the line? And that's hard for me because it is a rule-based offense, and I come from a small school, so my kids are playing basketball and baseball. I don't have them all year. I have them just that time. And so to expect, maybe he's a 1-year starter or a 2-year starter, and to expect him to be able to make all the right calls and communicate that to his teammates, that's a little bit hard for me to bite off on that sometimes. So that's tough. But
yeah, you know, you kind of get into tags and it's that, you know, man with two clocks never knows what time it is, right? Because which one do you honor, right? I'm going to forget his name, North Alabama head coach. I've talked about him on here a ton. Anyway, he, you know, he stays pretty biblical in his football coaching, and he says, you know, one of his favorite Bible quotes or Bible verses is, you know, a man can't serve two masters. And so it's kind of, you get into that sometimes. You start second guessing yourself with tags. I mean, everyone who runs RPOs has seen that, right? Like, my quarterback pulls it to throw the ball, we get 3 yards, but the run was open for 15 or a touchdown or whatever, right? It would have been better. So I think you just have to really keep in your mind that, like, yes, we want every play to be explosive, but sometimes it's the threat that we could do the other thing, right? So sometimes that is what we need to weaken the defense, which is kind of what I talk about in my, you know, protect your base clinic that I do, is just, yes, sometimes the RPO is not going to hit as well, or the run option, right? Maybe our quarterback pulls it and runs and gets tackled for a loss or whatever. But the defense now remembers they have to honor that quarterback will run the ball. They did it great on that play. Maybe they won't later. So yeah, it can get into, it can creep in a little bit, especially live on Friday night when the pressure's on, and you only get so many, especially with an offense like yours, where you're trying to elongate those series, right? And you're trying to shorten the game. So what do you get, like 8 times a game to have the ball? So you really need to capitalize on as many as possible. And so if you go out and start second guessing your tags and your options, you can run into some issues there pretty quick, in the mental game.
Yeah. And so tags was really kind of phase 1 for us to be able to make sure we could run our best stuff. So, you know, for our best couple series, we made sure that we had those tags, and they've been helpful to us. But that was kind of the issue that you run into with tags. As great as they are, you're not always in the right one. So the second part of that kind of for us became influences. You know, we could get on film and start breaking down a game plan, and we could say, you know, we could look at our game from the season before, or if we'd played that team earlier in the season and it was a playoff game or whatever, we could start identifying, you know, middle linebackers are 100% reading guards, or they're for sure reading fullback. And you could do that with the D-line too, and you could start to get an idea who they're reading. So for our best series, we wanted to start having some influence calls, and those have been really helpful for us at times. I think the drawback with an influence is you lose a guy in your blocking scheme. You're hoping that he takes a guy with him, but you do lose a guy in the scheme. But we've had some success with influence calls. I think they're valuable in the wing tee. We had a team that would their 2 middle linebackers are reading our guards 100%. And so when our guards would pull to block waggle, to block our bootleg pass off of Buck, the play side middle would come right to the quarterback. The backside middle, head on a swivel, we'd find the tight end. We want to get the ball to the tight end. We have to get it to him a couple times a game. That's our explosive play a lot, is to, hit the tight end across the middle of the field. And so we ran an influence call where our backside guard, our quick guard, would pull the other direction. And the first time we did it, I kind of told these guys, I'm going to do this in this game. We've never done this, and I've never seen it on film or in a clinic or where anyone's doing it. We're going to try it. Yes, we're going to lose a blocker, but our tight end's going to be wide open. And so second or third series in the game, we got into it. Our guard pulled out there, and that play side backer went with him. I mean, just like it was sweep away, just gone, not even looking. And our tight end ran across the field, and it worked perfectly. I said, do it again. Do it again. And the safety was tackling him, but we were getting 12, 15. He broke it. And we did it all the way down to the 10-yard line. They took a timeout, and I was like, oh. And this is a team that we've had a tough time beating. It's the best team in our league. And we'd ran boot 5 out of 6 plays down to the 10-yard line. We scored on that possession, and they made an adjustment when we seen them the next time. But we've had some success with that type of thing in both the Buck series, the Trap series. Buck and Trap go together for us, so that series. And then we've done that a little bit in our Belly series too, where we have a false lead. We get in a house formation, a false lead both sides, and you can keep one of those middle linebackers from flowing across. But I think influence calls are another good way to run your best stuff, and I think you need them with your best few plays.
Yeah, so I'm not as well versed in influence. I mean, the word influence trap holds a lot of, I can remember that from when I was growing up. I've saw it a little bit in the flex bone. The coach that I worked under my second year kind of ran some influence pulls and stuff. But mainly there was just exactly what you just described. I had a coach here in Oklahoma that came on the podcast and talked about, he even did it like if he wanted to run basically like outside zone, pin pull, I guess, Trojan, whatever your verbiage is for it here, but he would just pull that in a run game. He would pull the backside guard the wrong way. And he was like, I'm trying to get so wide, he's never going to get there anyway, right? He's never going to be, I mean, he can maybe hit the A gap, the play side A gap, and keep something from running through. But the guy that's running through is the guy that's reading him. So we'll just run him away. And he talked about how well that worked, right? With just running basically pin pull strong and then ran his backside guard away. And it would pull a middle linebacker and sometimes a safety. So he gets a 2-for-1. And then you can go out and pick up that defensive end or whatever you need to do with that guy. So he kind of ended up getting a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 out of this one influence block, and he loved it. He did it in the pass game as well, like you were talking about with his boot stuff. And it was just keeping one more guy engaged in the run game when he's trying to throw the ball, or keeping him engaged on the wrong side of the ball when he wants to, try to get it out wide. So lots of fun stuff there with influences.
Yeah, we have one on our cross block. Off of our cross block, or we'll call it belly. That's probably a term that is more universally used in the wing tee, belly. So your ISO play, your halfback's going to lead through, and you're going to give it to the fullback. We have a play off that. We call it belly. It's probably ISO sweep or whatever for somebody else, belly sweep, where you're faking that give to the cross block, and then you're going to pull it out and give it to your wingback late coming across. And so our H is supposed to block out on that. But what we found against teams that were good is as soon as he steps out and arcs out, they don't crash on that ISO play anymore. They go. So we started just saying, hey, you're just going to influence and lead right through and get on a middle. And we're kind of leaving that guy unblocked at times if he doesn't bite a little bit. But that's been really good for us. That's the play we're running the most in a game, is that ISO play. So we lead up through. And so we have our halfback and our fullback basically doing nothing, but they're taking some defenders with them. So yeah, there's definitely some things in the influence game that can assist you in the wing tee for sure. What I hate about it, so the reason I started looking for a third thing is you have whoever it is, maybe you're doing it a bunch with your quick guard. He's one of your best players, and he's just he's going out there and blocking no one and doing. That's hard. That's hard for me. We have when we watch film on Mondays, we run hundreds for all the no blocks. So you're looking at him, he just pulled out there and did nothing. We're not going to give you a no block for that. He's doing his job, but it's that part's just a little hard for me to kind of just pull a guy that does nothing. Sometimes it kind of gets him in a funk. You have a player maybe who's one of your maybe not your best offensive lineman, and he's telling you on the sideline, just influence. And I'll get that sometimes, like, okay, that's working, but how about block somebody? So you get into that a little bit too sometimes, where you're kind of, in my opinion, the kids kind of take it as an easy way out sometimes. If it's working, I'll do it, don't get me wrong, but that part of it is kind of hard.
There's always the you're breaking your traditional, your foundation, right? Because you can even look at like Joe and I on the other podcast, we talked about one time like the original quarterback read play, right? Which was like zone read or whatever. And it's like, I can't even remember the story now. It was a long, long time ago, and an offensive tackle was getting his butt whipped by a defensive end. He couldn't block him anyway, so the coach said, fine, just don't block him. Just go away. Just do nothing. I'd rather you do nothing than get beat, and we think you've got something handled. And the quarterback just read it and pulled it and ran off with it. It's like sometimes you got to break what you know, right, to go out and find these new ways to do football, because whether it's tendencies, film, whatever, like you've kind of put something on film, and these, you can go out and break that with these replays and get a whole bunch of yards. But I really like where your mentality is. Like, I need to have that third thing, right? Because eventually people are going to figure it out, or I just don't feel good with it, whatever it is. You talk about your, running your counter play, it sounded like, essentially cross block, hand it off to the wing to go backside, and you're leaving a defensive end or a linebacker unblocked completely. That doesn't feel good as a coach. And the first time he blows that play up in the backfield, you're going to be like, like what? We got to have something, right? So, that's where we get into our shifts and motions and running people off with, I guess I never really thought about series play, but, we run kind of like jet sweep, with a wide receiver, but we don't always hand it. In fact, I would say we hand it less than we do anything else with it, because we're using it to pull people and manipulate and move people around. So, you get into all of these tags, and what we're kind of talking about is, run your best stuff, but do it out of a lot of different ways. I think Kenny's book is, one play many ways or whatever. It's kind of the same concept, right? Like we want to run this cross block or this belly or buck, whatever it is, but we got to look for ways to do it 1,000 ways. Yeah. And it sounds like you're at least leaning into that. For sure. I think it's neat you're considering what those players are going through, because if you do pull your best player to influence and you're literally having him do nothing and you go on and lose that game, what does that do to his mentality of like, man, they didn't even trust me to go over there and do the work, and then we weren't successful anyways. So it's good to have all those things, kind of at the top of your mind and working through it. So you kind of talked about letting your players make calls. So let's get into that, because I was taught as like a second year guy, as soon as I knew I didn't know football, which was like game one of my coaching career, because I was the DC for game one. Super crazy. I'm with you. I started reaching out to other guys in the profession to try to learn, and randomly enough got me into podcasting. But I had a gentleman tell me all the ways that they checked at the line, and we're talking they could change he just makes a call, a play. Hey, we're going to run outside zone here. I don't even know which direction we're going. You're going to call it at the line, right? And he gave you numbers, or like, if we found a gap that was open, we found spacing. We always talk about that, space, numbers, and leverage. So talk to me about that. How do you kind of walk your kids through making calls at the line, and how much do you trust them with?
Yeah, that's the part. It's been a journey, you being a young coach or whatever, you get on and you watch film, and maybe we had a formation that week. For example, we have a heavy set where we'll run, 2 tackles on one side, tight end on the other side, and we want to run buck sweep to the 2 tackle side and have those 2 big boys down block. And you get in a game and you're like, the play here was to run ISO back to the tight end side. They're overloading that. And so, you watch it and you're like, what if our quarterback would have just checked us into a different player? So I start to dabble in that a little bit. But the problem is, how much do I trust that kid to get us in the right thing? And we've done some things to make it really simple. As far as that goes, we do a little bit of that where we'll check into a different play. We have a no play system where we're not running a play. We'll get up in a formation and red set hike, and he'll stand up and look at me, and then I'll check us into a play. And that was a trust issue where I wasn't sure if the quarterback or the lineman that I have do that would get us in exactly the right thing. And so I was doing it from the sideline. And like I said, for me, I think the extra challenge in a small school is I don't have them all year or whatever. So, they're learning as they go, and we try to get more to that midseason. But all of that was really hard for me. audibles, checking the play at the line of scrimmage. I think some of that comes from just a hard-headed wing T philosophy where you're like, what we're calling will work, block it. So that was hard. We've certainly dabbled in it, but never really turned that loose, and still working on what that might look like for us moving into the future. We did some different things this year that were cool that we'll keep working on. But the one thing that we did do was, working with Pat Jones the day I mentioned there in the basement, he kind of kept helping me with that, is for this series that we believe is our best series, our bread and butter, we've got to be able to make some adjustments at the line of scrimmage. There was a lot of teams who aren't lining up exactly the same. That was part of their defensive game plan, is let's move our techniques around on the front. Let's walk backers up into gaps and mess with these guys. It's a rule-based offense. Let's kind of complicate their rules for them and take away, that ISO series, that belly series, take that away from them so they have to go to something else. So he started talking to me a little bit about the ways he was doing it. And as he explained it to me, my first thought is that's going to be so complicated for my kids. But we decided to do it, and it was a big investment. That was the first thing. If you've done any of that type of stuff, in my opinion, it was a big investment of time to learn it. We started having to have, we were having a cross block series before practice, before they went and got in pads. We're on dummies. We did that the first 8 weeks of the season. For 20 minutes, they came out with me on bags. We were writing up tests, at camp, and early in the season, we're writing up exact little tests and giving them and doing everything we could. What call would you make on this? But what we did on that cross block series is, when we go to the line of scrimmage, so now every time we go to the line of scrimmage, so that they don't know that we're in that series, our linemen are making a call, and there's many different calls, but they're going to call. A couple years ago, we're crossing it every time, and I could see sometimes that wasn't the best way to block it. You don't want to cross those two techniques. We're congesting the hole more than anything. And from a wing T coaching philosophy, my O-line coach, me, we're just saying, better technique, better pad level, flat back, drive your feet, open the hole. It's your job, cross it. We're good at this. You have to do it. And we weren't putting them in the best position to succeed. And when a team was good enough at taking it away, I found myself, I'm not calling that play. It's not working today.
Yeah.
So we let them this year for the first time, and it was the best that we've ran this series. We let them start making some calls at the line of scrimmage on blocking assignment.
I think it's a have-to thing. Eventually you just got to trust, and it's hard because that kid's career isn't on the line, right? He's not going to get fired and not be able to coach at that school and have to uproot his family. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. I just think we've hit that day and age where, number one, kids are smarter than they've ever been, number one, right? Like, that's scientifically proven. Every generation is multiple IQ points smarter than the one before it. And so these kids can handle a lot of football. We got pretty creative with ways to get more time, mainly with our quarterback, because that's usually who we have reading stuff. Of course, the O-line comes out and makes calls every series or every single play. And so you can work with them too. But we put together a quarterback school, right? And we're just going to go out and talk about, we want to throw a ton of RPOs. We want to run some quarterback read game. We want to do a bunch of this stuff. And so it was like, how can I find time to teach him all this? Well, it just happened in the spring. I started a few years ago just at lunchtime, like, hey, quarterbacks, you're with me, right? You're going to bring your lunch to my room. We're going to talk a little bit of football. And it just started increasing their football IQ to go along with all the other brains that God gave them. And that had huge impacts during the season. You talk about week one when you walk out and you want to install whatever your base plays are in one or two tags, and they already know it. So they're coaching on the field with you. A good friend of mine, Bo Collins, who's been on the show a couple times here, we had a quarterback the year we were together that there were several times that he just waved us off. Like, he called the entire play, not like had a check. We'd be trying to call some sidelines. He's like, no, y'all can't see what I can. And he'd go out and call a formation of play and go get 15 yards. And it's like, the kids can do it, right? They're the ones that are seeing the game live action. Like, they're up there in it. So if they can see something, an influence that's hitting well or whatever, we kind of give them some freedom to do that. I think we also have to remember that we are in the RPO era, right? I mean, I know it's been a few years, and some people are even going away from it. They're going to other stuff now, but kids are pretty used to, or maybe it's just hive mind across the country or whatever, but these kids understand reading a post-snap thing. So I snap the ball. If this guy crashes, throw the ball out there. If he stands flat, hand the ball off. Whatever your rules are, right? Kenny has peak. He's got some of his other plays where he's reading a certain player. If he does this, then do this. If he does that, do this. It's only 2 reads.
Yeah.
So if we can trust a kid to go out and read post-snap where he had to catch a ball, fit into the running back's belly and ride it and get his eyes somewhere and read this thing, why can't he come out pre-snap and just count heads? Hey, they got 6 dudes over there. I don't want to run that way. Just kidding. We're going to check it and go backside.
Yeah.
Or, whatever it is. I see a gap here. I like Joe, he uses the red and white side, reduced and a wide side. And it's like, do they have a player in B gap? Yes, they do. Well, then I don't want to run there. I had a B gap play called. We want to go somewhere else with it. And so just kind of letting them see that pre-snap thing, and maybe they just have 1 or 2 plays they can call, right? And that's why you talked about tags, and you're not always in the right tag. And I kind of like letting quarterbacks tag things up on their own. We got big in the last year was letting the quarterback call the routes that his outside receivers are going to run, right? He gets to call the RPO his inside receivers are going to run at the line. So I'm not tagging bubble. I'm tagging the run play, and the quarterback just knows, hey, I'm going to look out there and give my secret little signal to my inside receiver. It's very, very small. People won't even catch on it, but we know what it means. And now I've got every RPO that I ever wanted. I don't have to worry about what coach called not fitting because I've got 10 RPOs I can run, and the quarterback and wide receiver are on the same page, and that's really all that matters, right? You get into so it's like just having that trust in them. I think it challenges you as a coach, though. Right? You have to be able to go out and coach the fundamentals really well, really efficiently in the beginning of season, and then you got to move on. And we get stuck into something bigger I've been in the last couple of years is like you should have 1 or 2 everyday drills. Your whole practice shouldn't be an everyday drill, right? Because you've got to be able to go out and practice against what are you seeing this week. Our offensive breakdown is a lot about pre-snap stuff. What do we think alignment we're going to get to each formation? We go over every formation we want to run. Cool. Now, how do we make that wrong? Right? So it's got a tag that we call, tag the quarterback can call. Well, if all we're doing is practicing our fundamentals every snap of practice for 10 weeks, well, we can't ever get into that. We're never going to get to that next thing. And so I think it did challenge me as a coach, and it allowed, once I kind of figured it out, it allows me to challenge other coaches I work with. You've got to be really good at what you do, and you've got to put in the time in the off season. So the in season, we can get past. You're never going to quit tackling. You're never going to quit down blocking, right? You're going to run those fundamentals all the time.
Yeah.
But it can't eat up 45 minutes of defensive side of the ball that we just are always doing the same thing. We got to be able to move on to the next thing, whatever the kids need to tackle next. So,
yeah, you're for sure right about that. It challenges you as a coach. I for sure got better at understanding that play, but what I found is it made the whole staff better. My running back coach had to know and understand those calls. The offensive line coach, obviously, the tight end coach. So all my coaches who are working with different players, the whole staff got significantly better at understanding and running that series, and that was for sure part of the success that came from it. The other thing that I found from doing that, we're doing it with just that one series right now, and maybe we'll add a second series to it down the road, but the players took more ownership of that play. If they're making a call, hey, we're gonna kick out on this instead of cross it. So if they're doing something like that and they've made that call, they're taking a lot of ownership. They're doing, in my opinion, watching the film and looking back, it's like there was an extra effort here to make sure this play went because he called it. He checked into that blocking scheme, and he was the one who made that decision, and he has to be right. And you could kind of see that. I felt like from the line, the ownership that they were taking of it.
100%. And, we started that in our zone blocking, just letting the linemen name their zone blocks because, hey, coach, they're picking up. If I say ace, they know it's a zone block because we're going to double here. So they just start making their own calls. Once you give them that ownership, man, it does something for them. It just, like you said, they want to make that play work because it truly is on them now, right?
Yeah.
And that's hard for some coaches, right? It's hard to, I don't want to say give power away, but that's really what it is. When the play call is no longer in your hands, I said it earlier, that center is not going to get fired. He's not going to get sent to another school. because he made the wrong call, but you might, right?
Yeah.
So teaching them and increasing their IQ enough they can go out and make those calls takes a lot of trust. But I've found in my military and in all my leadership training, one, those power hungry, the guys that just can't let go generally fail more often than not anyways, because you're just not as flexible. I'm a big adaptability guy, right? Even our physical therapy clinic is named Adaptable PT. Like, rigid things tend to break. Adaptable things are, what does it be like water, right? Take the form of whatever you need to. But what we found in all of our leadership training and in the military and here in football as well is like whoever delegates the most generally gains the most power, right? You become more of a leader just by delegating and letting these other people go out and make these calls and have this ownership. So whether it's a coach on staff, you talked about like your running back coach, your O-line coach, they all have to get involved. Letting them go out and make the game plan, right, for that week. Maybe the running back's like, hey, I know my dude, he can't make that, but he can do these 2 or 3 things. So maybe these are the tags this week. He's not outrunning that D1, defensive end out there. So trying to get wide, for instance, you're tagged wide. Maybe that ain't the play this week. Maybe we need to have some answers backside. Or, O-line coach, same thing. Just letting them have some ownership in what plays we're going to run this week, what tags we're going to use, influences, whatever your play calling thing is, to kind of keep running your best stuff. Letting them have some ownership tends to work out really well too.
Yeah. I don't think we would have succeeded with it my first year or 2 or 3 years coaching. It took some time. And for us, we have 12 coaches on our staff. I count all 12 of them. 5 of them are our sixth grade coaches and our 8th grade coaches, but we all 12 work together. And coming into this year, we have some kids that have gone through the full program now that have played in this system for these coaches from 6th grade to 12th grade. And so we have some kids now starting varsity that have ran this for a long time, the base way. And so I found that to be true, where it's like, I'm using this excuse that I don't have them all year. They're basketball players and baseball players and wrestlers, but I do have them in this program for a long time, and they understand it better than I thought. And so letting them make some adjustments wasn't as daunting as I thought it was going to be, because they do have some experience. So that certainly helped, what we're doing. And I know a lot of schools have success with that too. A lot of the good schools, I think you would find that as a common ingredient in the recipes, is they have their youth programs running their same system, coached the same way, using the same terminology. And that helped us be able to do it. So our kids on that series, which we think is our best series, our bread and butter, that belly series, they're coming up to the line of scrimmage and they can make one of 5 calls, whether they're running to the tight end side or to the quick side. They can make one of 5 calls, and getting into what those calls are is probably more of like a clinic discussion than a podcast discussion. But that when we installed that, I'm like, that's a lot. And our coaches were saying that's a lot. And I've gone back. It's been an off-season project where I'm grouping some of those plays in a group, getting 20 plays of cross block, 20 plays of belly, 20 plays of sweep. And I'm looking at those cross blocks and I'm marking on the play call what call they made at the line of scrimmage and did they execute it correctly. And they did a lot of the time. A lot of the time they did. And I'll look at it and say, man, if we would have just crossed that like we did the first 3 years, no matter what, do it right and do it with an attitude and get it done. There's not a play there. You're just hoping for your fullback to get you 3.
Right.
And he does a lot, but blocking it the way they called it and executing the way they did, that turned that into a good play. That turned that into a potential 1-yard gain or something. It turned that into a 5-yard play. So we're going to keep growing with it, but that's something that we've kind of turned loose on that series. And looking back at it, I think the investment of time to do it, at least with your best thing, or maybe your best 2 things, to have that third element. I'm talking about tags and influences is the first 2. To have that third element that's led by the players to get you in the right thing helped our offense.
Well, Coach, man, we'll start closing out here. Excellent conversation. And I think it does take a lot on a coach to just kind of let some of those things go. You've got to trust the kids. And it's really hard. It's hard to trust your career with a 14 to 18-year-old kid, right? And you talk about small school. And, dude, I worked for a small school last year for a little while, and that's what I heard 1,000 times. It was like, these kids are just stupid. They're just dumb, right? These kids don't know what they're doing. And it's like, man, it's something. My favorite human on earth is Kenny Ridley, and he told me very, very early in my coaching career that whatever you expect of them, they will learn. They are probably smarter than you, right? So whatever you expect of them, they're going to pick it up and they will execute it. And there's nothing wrong with taking something away for a week if it's not working or whatever it is. So, kind of what we're going to jump into our what not to do as a coach here. And today's lesson is just don't lose your identity chasing internet football. It is the off-season time. We've all been to 1,000 clinics. Hopefully, some of y'all are planning to either just went to Boston or getting up to Milwaukee to see these last couple of Gun T clinics. But there's a lot of stuff, right? There's a ton of stuff on the internet, Glacier Drive and all that stuff. You can go out and find a lot of football. Don't lose your identity. Coach, I love that you're wing T through and through, right? Like, once again, that's not my favorite offense, but if you know it and you can answer questions, you can go be successful. There's nothing wrong with playing for 2 state championships and going to the semifinals a couple times, right? That's a pretty successful high school coaching career. So there's a lot of people around me that have never even done that. So keep doing you. But also don't be so rigid that you're going to break, right? You've got to be able to be flexible. You have to be able to move with the times, cater things to certain players. That's something we didn't really get into, is how do we change all these calls with who we have each year, right? You've got to tailor your offense to the players that you have on that team that year. And that's probably when you get into these like no call offenses, we just do it our way and we do what we always do. You don't always have the same players. So that's probably what sours me on them the most. But so there's your lesson for the day. Don't lose your identity, but don't be so rigid that you break. Want to, once again, appreciate you coming on, Coach. Real quick, mention our sponsors, Ace Sports. Mark and Ryan are doing great things for teams around the nation. Lots of video boards going up this year. I had great conversation with both these guys this year. I think I'm traveling to Kentucky in a couple months to go hang out with Mark Bridges over there. Actually, that might be in April. That might be next month. And then getting down to, hopefully I'll be down at the Texas High School Football Clinic in July, I believe is when that one is. So I'll be there as well, traveling with the Ace Sports guys just to go talk ball and just talk to people about what they can do for your team. Small school, big school, it doesn't matter. Okay, get one of these video boards put up and it's a cheat code for fundraising. So do what you can do there. Get to social media, Coach. I know you said you have a personal Instagram. Is there any other social media you have? How can people reach out to you if they want to ask you about wing T, or y'all can compare decoder rings or whatever?
Yeah, Instagram's great. JoeQ21 is my handle on there. Feel free to reach out.
Awesome. And then you said your school has one too. Remind me what it was.
Kanab Cowboy Football, all one word. We're on there on Instagram as well, on Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. I am at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. Don't forget about the Patreon, guys. I know it's time of the year that we're starting to create some products and kind of want to start advertising our kids out there for recruiters to see for next year. I think most of the 25s are probably done for without going to a JUCO or something. But, we can still celebrate kids and help build our program that way. So jump on patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. See where I can help you out today. And then I have a YouTube at Coach Chambo OK. I think is the same one. You look up Daniel Chamberlain on YouTube, it's probably going to pop up. But that's just where I'm literally teaching my wife football. So if you're looking to get back to the basics, you need to onboard a new coach, jump over to YouTube. We're kind of doing some fun, very simple things over there. Terminology may be a little different what you use. If you want to talk to Kenny, he's at FB Coach Simpson on Twitter. You can email him at fbcoachsimpson@gmail.com. Everything else is FB Coach Simpson. And then, of course, jump onto his YouTube. The podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod on Twitter. We want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We'll hope you join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing and leaving a review. It's time we really need some reviews. The numbers are definitely jumping. We're up. I think we're up to like almost 7,000 listeners a month right now, which is crazy for we're in our third year of podcasting. But we'd like to keep growing. So please share it out. Give us the reviews. We'll be able to share. Coach, once again, man, thanks so much for taking time out of your Wednesday morning. Are y'all on spring break?
No, we got a couple weeks still, so we're still grinding away here.
This whole nation being on different spring breaks is wild to me. I understand that we can't all go to Florida at the same time, but also, like, what are we doing? So I come for you in the middle of my spring break, and you're still 2 weeks out. But thanks, man, for giving your time this morning, and hope to have you back on, dude. I'm sure that when Kenny gets back from his stuff, we'd love to have you on and talk some wing T football.
Yeah, thanks. You guys have so many good resources. I've been a follower. I've never left a review, so I'll get on and do that. But you guys have so many great resources. We have drills that we've got from Kenny's books and YouTube that we're using from 6th grade to 12th grade that we do every day. So there's a lot of great resources you guys are providing. It's been great to follow you guys. I appreciate being on.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. We talk about simplifying, right? Keep it simple for the kids and the coaches. So, all right, we'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.